Almond Board of California. My name is Warren Cohen. I'm the Vice President of International Sales for Blue Diamond's Global Ingredient Division. And we have a great session prepared for you today to highlight some of the industry's success in this amazing market that we all work in as far as India. As everybody knows, India is our largest export market, and it's not an easy market, and it's not for the faint of heart either. But with a lot of hard work and learning on how to sell in India, many of the packers in this room has found it a very rewarding experience, going forward. And it's also a market that has a lot of potential to grow, which is really exciting. And if you look at the chart, do I push out? There we go. You can see on the chart, the success that this industry's had over the last 20 years was quite amazing. It's large increases, and the exciting thing is there's a lot of potential to go forward. These increases have been accomplished by many of the folks in this room after many years of perseverance, determination, and creating strong sales with good Indian partners in the country. And for many of the years, this growth has been organic. The market there has traditional buying seasons. You have Diwali, you have the wedding season, but you also have health. And what other market in the world can you find a local government proposing or stating that almonds are the immunity nut or immunity health? So you can't beat that. So over the more recent years, we've seen consumption has been expanding into new areas, new applications, and also into new regions throughout the country. And to date, the southern and eastern parts of India are really untouched if you think about the massive population in those areas. And they really haven't been exposed to almonds, and the potential is huge, as we go forward. So to better understand the India market and to highlight our industry's successes and where we go from here, we have a great panel with us that'll take us through what's happening in ABC activities in India. And we have, to my left here, Emily Fleischman, who's the Vice President for Global Development, Market Development for the ABC. We have Julie Adams, Vice President of Technical and Regulatory Affairs. And then we have Laurel Muir, Managing Partner, of Sterling Rice Group. So they're going to take over the presentation, and at the end, we'll have some Q&A, time for Q&A, and we'll go from there. So I'll hand this over to Emily, and we'll start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Warren. Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you here. Looking forward to sharing with you our landscape view of the market, as well as share an update on our programs. Unfortunately, our regional director, Sudarshan Mazumdar, who many of you probably know, could not be with us due to COVID. But we have done what we could, and actually Sudarshan did all the hard work, to bring him here in the best way that we can. So I'm going to show a little video.
Hi, I'm Sudarshan Mazumdar, Regional Director for India, South Korea, and Japan for ABC. Since I've been here for over 11 years, I've had the advantage of seeing the big expansion on the market, as well as how the program has evolved and expanded, making India a very important market for the Californian almond industry. Unfortunately, unlike the last many years, I cannot be with you in person this year, but knowing the quality of presentations which are to follow, I'm sure at the end of the session you would have achieved a very strong appreciation of the country as well as the program in India.
Don't you love to hear all the horns honking in the background, just like you're there? Anyways, but as Warren talked about, the growth in India has been tremendous. Almost up to, honestly, it feels like it's going to be at 400 million pounds before we know it, which would be half the size of the U.S. market, just to put that in perspective, which is huge. And, the importance of the size, really can't be understated if you compare it to some of the other markets. If you take together all of the 4 countries in Europe where we have programs, India is above that, which I think is telling. And then you can see where China is in comparison. So, but the great thing about it is the market has such great potential. And, if you look at this trend line, 42% increase in 1 year, it's crazy. And the other thing is just how our growth in that marketplace has really outpaced GDP and population growth. So GDP had been on a good clip prior to COVID, and I'm sure it's going to be coming back. And the population is still growing at a relatively large pace, but almonds are outpacing that tremendously. And as we're going to lay out, there's so much more upside to be had in the market. Now, I'm going to play for you, before I hand this over to Julie, we can talk a little bit about trade and regulatory. I'm going to play a little introduction to that from Sudarshan.
The Indian regulatory environment is ever evolving with twists and turns at every stage. The complexities which could tie you up in gaudy knots which are impossible to open. The inclination is to try to find a way around them, but as you've seen, that just means they'll come up again later. So one needs dexterity to resolve and untangle these knots as they arise.
Okay, well, thank you, Sudarshan, Emily, and my co-panel members here. It's a pleasure to be with you. Namaste. What an interesting morning. And I have to say that Warren's comment about India not being for the faint heart is quite true. And one of the reasons, I think, is this idea of jugad. And to really understand India, you need to understand this principle that is essentially, there's a Hindi word, jugad, which really means workaround, quick fix. The way things get done in India are to expedite them. If you need to bend the rules a little bit, you'll do what you need to do, really to be flexible in the way you approach problem solving. And I think that is an essential part of the way things operate in India. But it also can be a real challenge when you're trying to deal with market access and technical issues. So what I'd like to do is just spend a few minutes talking about some of the key areas that we have been addressing in India. So looking first at tariff taxation, the duty area, then taking a look at regulatory issues and how those are being applied. And then finally, talk a little bit about learnings and how the trade government-to-government relationship is proceeding. So let's first look at tariffs and duties. And as many of you know, there is a specific duty in India. And so prior to the tariffs that were put in place in the US on steel and aluminum, we were dealing with a specific duty of 35 rupees per kg for in-shell and 65 rupees for kernels. What happened is, after some of these duties in the US were announced, India had talked about raising their duties, but they didn't implement anything right away. What they did do is they raised the existing duties to the bound rate, WTO bound rate. So that's when in-shell stayed at 35 because that was the bound rate for in-shell, but kernels went to 100 rupees per kg. And that applied to all imports, whether it was US, Australian, any market. What then happened is India went ahead and implemented their retaliatory tariffs related to Section 232. And that's when the US went to 41 rupees per kg for in-shell and 120 rupees for kernels. And that's where the duties are right now. The other important fact is GST, Goods and Services Tax. And Warren was mentioning how really the market has expanded. You have trade going on throughout the country. GST was actually a way to ensure that these local taxes were harmonized across the country. The challenge I think that we see here is that for almonds, pistachios, hazelnuts, many of the imported tree nuts, the GST rate is 12%. But if you look at walnuts, peanuts, cashews, which are locally produced, that's at a 5% rate. So something that we're paying attention to, and we know that our trade negotiators are very aware of. So let's turn to some of the regulatory issues that we're dealing with. I think this is where I just wanted to highlight a couple of the kinds of things that we deal with in India. And so many of you know that recently there was an issue related to phytocertificates and how the fumigation to be done. This came about suddenly with no written notification, and really the genesis was that Some of the inspection authorities were saying that these local guidelines, this NSP 22 or NSPM 22 guidelines, were to be applied for imports. Well, in fact, that's actually for accrediting domestic applicators. It's not for imports. So that needed engagement with USDA, APHIS to really try and get that clarified. Another issue we're really watching closely is non-retail labeling. And there are always different interpretations as far as what labeling is required for imported product. The problem is that India has introduced new guidelines at several different intervals, and what we find is we're dealing with 2011, 2016, 2017-19, which kind of disappeared, and then a proposed 2020 labeling regulation that hasn't been implemented. But it doesn't really give guidance as far as what's being applied to imported commodities versus a sample pack that's available in a retail shop. So this idea of retail labeling is an area that we really need to have clarified. You have global standards as far as how non-retail is being interpreted, but these are the kinds of things that we're having to try and get alignment on. The other two areas that we're following that don't seem to have a direct impact but we know are important would be standards which were established for almond kernels. Now, we don't export a lot of almond kernels to India, but there was a concern that India uses parameters that are really focused on quality issues, not on food safety. So the kernel standards actually refer to chipped and scratched or damage, oil content, things that you normally wouldn't find in a government standard. That would really be more of a commercial negotiation. So there's a concern that this could be a precedent down the road, and these standards are also applying to other in-shell or other tree nuts that are being imported. So almonds aren't alone in these concerns. And then finally, one that we recently saw notified had to do with food facility registration. Now, India has advised that they're looking at a new requirement for risk foods. Now, if you're accustomed to what we're seeing in China with food facility registration, it makes us a little nervous because one of the real issues is how is this going to be interpreted? How is it going to be defined? At this point, we really don't know. We assume almonds will not be considered a high-risk food, but until there's something further in terms of how this is going to be defined, it raises some questions in our own minds. So with that environment and this whole area of, work around, not seeing things documented, this is one of the real challenges, I'd say, that we have on the technical and regulatory side. Now, if you were in the session yesterday morning where Joan and Jason were talking about some of the activities that are underway from the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, you heard Joan commenting on the Trade Policy Forum. This is really good news to see this reestablished. It's a way to get a dialogue going where hopefully we can address things on a bilateral, non-political level. So we'll be watching closely to see how these conversations really roll out in the coming year. But this aspect of government-to-government consultations continues to be a challenge because we rarely see anything put in writing from Indian authorities. Quite often, USDA in Delhi has gone to their counterparts in Government of India asking for a letter, asking for guidance, asking for information that could then be shared. But getting anything in writing has been challenging. And so that means that from an importer perspective and a shipper perspective, this idea of jugaad and the workaround really becomes the way business is done. And so from our perspective, and as we look at how we are successful in India going forward, having a relationship with the trade is fundamental to the way we deal with issues. Indian government, like the US, will listen to their own industry before they'll listen to an exporter. But we really need to be aligned and working together on these issues. And this is where we've seen that for some of the local importers, it's difficult to engage directly with government. There's a hesitancy to be at the front of that spear, if you will, in making those contacts. So we're continuing to see, are other alliances, are there other associations that are working on behalf of a number of sectors in India that we could share some of these concerns with, and they can help carry these messages forward. So that's an I think we'll continue to focus on, working with the Indian trade to see if there are importer associations that can be more actively engaged in some of these areas. That's, I think, going to be an important focus as we go forward. Finally, the one thing I would just like to mention is some of you have participated in the conference that we've done in India. Usually it's before Gulf Food. It's not going to happen before Gulf Food. Tentatively, we're looking at a date prior to INC in May, but we'll be sending out more information once dates are established and we ensure that we're not overlapping with other conferences and other commitments. So with that, I will stop. Thank you very much and look forward to discussion later.
So a little intro from Sudarshan before we get started.
The growth in shipments has been tremendous over the last few years. India has already become the largest export market for the Californian almond industry. The question that arises with this kind of growth and size of market, have we reached the end of the potential of market growth? However, as you get to see now, there's a tremendous upside which still exists. For India, the game has just begun.
So as Sudarshan said, not only is India important for today, but the market indicators show that there is just so much growth opportunity ahead. So the potential of the market really can be seen pretty simply if you look at per capita consumption. So compared to the other markets, India is significantly lower at about 1/3 of a pound per year. And when you compare that to the US, Italy, Germany, and Canada are over 2 pounds per year. So imagine if we get 1.4 billion people eating 2 pounds of almonds. That would be pretty amazing. But probably won't get quite there, but tremendous upside to be had. And not only is it the population that makes India attractive, but when you look at the economy itself, it has the 6th largest economy, or 6th largest nominal GDP. It's expected to be the 3rd largest by 2031. I mean, that's incredible. And the growth in 2022 is expected to be about 8.5% above China. And the consumer demographics are really favorable. India is a really young nation, and so it makes it dramatically different than most of the other markets in Asia, and as well as our Western markets. And the middle class is rising. It's projected to be more than 50% of the population by 2030. As well as the higher income levels are obviously rising as well. There will be 70 million fewer people in low income in India by 2030, like just 70 million people. That's amazing. And what's true across all cultures is when fortunes rise, we see food as one of the first things that people upgrade, which bodes very well for almonds. So not everybody in the room may know this, but India really is very recently more of an open economy. Up until about the late 80s, it was much more of a closed economy, but the growth since the late 80s, it's been tremendous, and it really opened up the doors for what you've seen in the GDP growth for the past 30 years. And as growth has come, people have gotten more exposed to globalization because of travel and technology, and it's led to a rising aspiration across consumers and increased consumerism and consumptions of goods. And by 2030, India will have nearly 90 million new households headed by millennials who were born into this type of economy. And having grown up in that type of economy, their expectations for their employment, their education, are all just different, and it will help break away from some of the frugal attitudes of previous generations. And this shift has really changed consumer attitudes and the society. India is moving from a country of privilege to a country of potential. And in the past, opportunities for education and quality of jobs was really restricted to the upper echelons of society, but that's changing. And there's been rapid growth in the economy, and the improved connectivity and infrastructure that's starting to really spread have really removed some barriers to success. It's also raising the hope and aspirations amongst the large sections of people for a better life. And with more opportunities coming their way, this democratization of success from the privilege of household to which you're born and to where you think you can actually go is just a really big change. And Sudarshan and I talk quite a bit about that as we think about the marketing programs and how we can capitalize on that. But that doesn't mean recognizing all that potential is going to be easy. At an individual level, that shift is really, it puts a lot of pressure on families within the market to be the best. And this whole idea of getting ahead is, everybody knows it's a slow road. There's no quick fix, which actually bodes well for almonds, because we believe almonds, lead to a better tomorrow by daily consumption, and it works really well for us. So, not surprisingly, parents are really pushing their kids hard. They want them to do well in school because they believe that could be a surer road to success. However, things are changing as well. Education isn't the only path to success, as people are seeing success through sports and other avenues of life. And what is interesting about India is the traditions that have been such a part of the culture. They're not leaving. They're still a part of life. So there's this combination of modernity and tradition that's there, which gives us opportunity to kind of leverage that as we think about our marketing programs. And it's all across all social classes. Ms. Sudarshan and I talk about that as well. He's surprised by that at some level, that's sticking so deeply. And he's going to talk a little bit now.
The modernization of Indian lifestyle can be seen from the kind of unhealthy foods people are having and the lack of physical activity. This has resulted in a huge health problem in India. There's a high incidence of big growth of lifestyle disease in India, such as diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. And that's one of the reasons health has become an important priority for many Indians.
So Sudarshan kind of noted we're not just looking at shifts in population and demographics and mindset, but we're also seeing these shifts and changes of consumers' attitudes towards health and their expectations of their own health and what they're willing to invest to get there. So people have realized if they want to succeed, and they're thinking at it as the long game, that health is really important. They want to be energetic, active, and sharp. And so for this, they're changing their behaviors. Their growing health consciousness has driven an increase in health clubs and gyms across the country. We see this when we used to go into the market and do consumer research. We will do that again one day. But people talk frequently about the time spent at the gym and how important the gym is to their life. And from my conversations with my colleagues, that wasn't the way it was 10, 15 years ago. But people are also realizing that physical health isn't the only part that they need to watch out for. Mental health is important. And in the past, that had been a taboo subject, as it has been in a lot of markets, but things are opening up for that conversation as well, and people are looking to take care of their mental health for the short term and the long term. Which brings us to this whole idea of holistic health. For Indian consumers, they think that is the driver of success. And so mental alertness, digestive health, glowing skin, shiny hair, all these things they're trying to do to demonstrate that they have holistic health, and they think that will lead to success. And because of this, more and more people are investing in their health. We talked about the gyms. There's also increases in meditation apps, at home exercise equipment, and that is just really provides an interesting opportunity as we think about going into the market ways. And when we break this down to the lowest level, we see that health is really about prevention, protection, and performance. Those three kind of come together. And, there are foods aiming to be in all three of those spaces. And we see different foods, either traditional foods try to shift their positioning into one of those, or newer foods in the typical Indian diet coming in and trying to own one of those. The great thing about almonds is we can be in all three. And we are the only one that really meets the needs of a healthy mind and a healthy body. And if you look at the benefits ladder, if you take confidence to lead to confidence and success, you really need to have both in line. And the benefit science, given all the research that ABDC has done to prove that. In fact, we're doing more research actually in the Indian market to add some additional level of credibility and relevance to that consumer. But it also comes through Ayurveda. And we've done work to dig into Ayurveda and found the connection to almonds, and we can talk to that, and we've used that in market as well. And over the last 18 months, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Warren did, the Indian government has helped us out too, and they've, promoted almonds and immunity and the connection there. And so we have been able to repurpose some of that content as well, which has been really phenomenal. And so all of this focus on health is not just changing what people think and what they're doing in terms of exercise, but it's changing what they're eating. I'm gonna play one more video.
Snacking is fun in our lives. This is very much so in India, where you'll find a range of snacks which vary from region to region in the country. Most of these snacks are high in fat, sugar, salt, or are deep fried. They're really tasty, but unhealthy.
Sudarshan's wife is a former actress. I feel like she was maybe behind the scenes helping him out a little bit. He did such a great job filming these. I love it. Anyways, but as he demonstrated, we know that Indians enjoy many snacks, and traditionally they're not as healthy, but they are very tasty. They tend to have high salt, high sugar, high fat, but we're seeing this growth in healthy snacking. Oh, I skipped a page. And which is really exciting because almonds fit in so well into many of those products. And so there's been a shift in pattern from the 1990s also for snacking. Used to be very much focused on the regular meal diet, so your 3 squares a day, more of a US phrase, applying that to India. But Sudarshan and I, we talk a lot about how snacking's been more part of the culture and a huge space for us to be. And these are just some of the items that have come up in the marketplace in the last few years. It's protein bars, new snacks, different juices. We're seeing, every time I go in the market, there already is kind of the bottom of milk that has been there for many years. But we're seeing more US-based almond milks in the marketplace as well. So changing, very exciting for us and a lot of opportunity. So I'm going to play you one more video.
Almonds are a part of our lives and rooted in the ancient medicinal texts of Ayurveda. As India evolves, the need for almonds increases. Our job is to identify the changing needs of the consumers and widen the program accordingly. We keep on understanding the evolving consumers to draw out insights for program leverage and in program evolution.
Great, so let's dive in really quick to start to talk about how do all of these things in terms of emerging economy, shifting mindset, shifting demographics, and really an emerging retail landscape, how do those come together to really showcase where almonds can go next and where the emergence can come from? We know right now in India that retail has been changing. Over the last few years, really last 20 years, modern retail came in, but during the pandemic, we saw a dramatic increase in e-commerce. And I think this is really exciting for us because it starts to shift that almonds don't have to be just seen in one traditional space, but really start to balance that tradition and modernity that Emily talked about. We've seen everything from Amazon and then also individual shipment and other companies coming in from the retailers as consumers were really worried during the beginning of COVID on how going out and others could really impact. So just as we've seen in other markets, this big shift towards e-commerce, it's really nice to see, even it's still small, movement in technology and in these new areas. The other thing we see is really that we are holding on to the loose sales while still growing the consumer packaged goods space. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll just keep going. So we have seen that consumer packaged goods, new product introductions, including almonds, has increased 300% in the last 6 years, and that's more than any other market in Asia. So also tremendous growth as we see not only the retailers getting behind almonds in a variety of different formats, to also now CPG as well. So the program has been changing and expanding, and I think it's really important to note that really there are three key programs that exist within the India market. First of all is supporting the morning occasion, that traditional space that does the soaking overnight by the mother, giving to the child and family for mental acuity. but then also really dialing up snacking in the last number of years. And you're going to see some additional work that's done in that area today to really push snacking even further. Then finally, gifting. We know gifting has been a real big increase in the last 5 to 10 years, and we see continued growth opportunities there. So first of all, in terms of snacking, snacking, as I said, was traditionally kind of thought of as this morning occasion of hand to mouth, but we're seeing our huge opportunities to create it with adults, with children, and then also with young adults as well, through both our consumer education programs and then also through our beauty program, which we're going to showcase here today. So with that kind of changing mindset, how do we move and keep the tradition space of the mother to child mental acuity connection? Because that link to success is so important to us. That piece is what we ultimately need to build off of because, as Emily shared, it really aligns with the aspirations of today as the middle class continues to grow and just the tremendous opportunity to then connect that to success of your future. So you're going to see here, we're just going to play one quick ad and we can talk about it.
मेरी हुई तेरी हर आरज़ू मुश्किल राहों पे मैं साथ हूँ और मंजिल पे ये राह जब पहुँच जाए सपने मेरे भी पूरे हो जाए मैं साथ हूँ तेरी मंजिलों पे मैं साथ हूँ तेरे प्रोटीन फाइबर और एनर्जी से भरे बादाम हर रोज.
So this work really drives on that markers of success, supporting the child at a young age, but then also moving beyond the soaked almonds to snacking on almonds as well, showcasing that these can be part of your long-term success as you continue to grow in your life, and that, really trying to live up to that potential that can exist within every Indian consumer. The second area I want to talk about is gifting. Gifting has really emerged in the last number of years. Traditionally, gifts were often given as sweets, whether those were originally Indian prepared sweets that many people created within the home. Then we saw a huge increase in the snack market, but with the ability to marry our health research, the research around diabetes, and also the thoughts around dry fruits, the market was really able to emerge in the idea of providing health and gifting health to one another. And so we've seen a big increase in the ability to both sell these pre-created gift boxes within the market of almonds or other dry fruits, and also the ability to have people create those within the home as well. It's also a wonderful time period in terms of, just as here in the US, so many people think about the new year providing a new chance for rediscovery and emerging in your best health. And we see that in terms of the ability to gift almonds during Diwali as well, for that giving that gift of health and reemergence in the market as well. So we're not going to play the ad here today, but I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. Okay. So the programs overarching are really focused on these different areas. So we're talking about morning occasion, talking about snacking, and also talking about gifting. Knowing how much India has really changed, ABC programs, we know, must continue to evolve to meet the needs of consumers and remain relevant. The growth has really been driven both by increasing the target and the types of usage, but also on geographic expansion, along with consistent messaging and penetration. So even though it's very well known in the market to consume almonds for mental acuity in the morning, we know that on average, people only have 2 to 3 almonds, and they generally only do it 3 times a week. Well, we don't all need to be smart just 3 times a week. So the opportunity to continue to reinforce those messages, not only to gain increased frequency, but also to continue to seed to the next generation this strong connection with mental acuity for children and adults remains an opportunity. But we also see, as Emily talked about, the huge potential to drive snacking because of the changing environment that's happening within the market and the increased focus on healthy snacking as well. The other big gains that have been made in the market are geographic expansion. As many of you know, originally a lot of the usage and focus was in the north and the western part of the country. But we've seen huge opportunities to continue to grow the south and eastern states. And so that's where the program has really been expanding over the last couple of years. And we constantly need to continue to look to what's next. How can we meet these changing consumer needs to really push forward? And right now, we know there are so many health benefits that are associated with almonds. Of course, brain and mental acuity, and that ladder to success continues to sit above everything within the program. But we do see that based on the health conditions and the changing dynamics within the market, that there are other spaces to be able to leverage as well. So we're taking advantage of those. The first one is the opportunity to target younger snackers with digital campaigns. Digital has really emerged in India over the last number of years, and there's some statistics. I know it's sometimes hard to get stats on consumer usage out of India. There's some thoughts that India may be one of the largest or the largest user of Facebook and Instagram in the world at 200 million users. But we do see overarching that 85% of these younger consumers are using YouTube and about 75% of them are using Facebook. We know that India is one of the youngest countries in the world, so our ability to continue to connect and seed our connection is incredibly important. So we're going to show a film that just launched this week talking about healthy snacking to this new younger consumer base, and this is a digital forward campaign, whereas a lot of our other campaigns really focus on those reach vehicles that surround around TV. So we know digital formats, they have to be quick and definitely delivered here. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to continue to talk to consumers about, in these new formats, new younger consumers, to really reinforce the snacking benefits moving forward. The next area that I want to talk about is the new beauty campaign that will really drive to increase consumption with young women. Through our consumption research, we found that there is a time period after university, before a woman has young children and starts doing the morning occasion because her mother or her grandmother is yelling at her that she has to do this child, that we actually lose almond usage with consumers. So we did some work to identify where could the opportunities be. We wanted it to be a snacking campaign, but we wanted to see how could we give consumers another reason to consume almonds and keep almonds front and center with them instead of relying on that mother or grandmother to remind them to do the morning occasion again for their family. And we found both with women and with men that there was a huge driver around beauty. And it was really interesting when we were doing the initial testing, we're putting these beauty messages around great skin and hair, and we said, let's just throw them into men too. Let's just see what men are going to say to this. And I have to tell you, I said to the team, okay, just hold on for this portion of, just close your ears for a moment. This is going to be quite possibly ridiculous. And I was completely wrong. Men instantly gravitated towards these spaces because of the desire to be successful, to look successful at work, and to be able to connect with their colleagues in news. And they said, if I have horrible skin, if I look unkept, that's going to be the detractor in comparison to them seeing how successful I can become. And so we saw this huge opportunity. Now, it is focused, this one, on young women, but we see a huge potential to continue to push these, and just another reason to eat almonds in these beauty messages. So this campaign is launching in just a couple weeks. It is digitally focused. It's going to create the opportunity to talk about almonds in terms of skin health, nourish here, and then also weight management. So it's bringing kind of the collective focus of almonds forward in a new beauty way. All right, so giving consumers one more reason to choose almonds. And these early jobbers, really, they're part of our future. They're creating, just to talk about millennials here in the US market, these are our next big consumers of the future as well. So, sorry, one more. Oh, I apologize. All three are in here. You're getting the full beauty message, right? I hope you go and eat some almonds after this. Okay, we're just gonna go for it. So with the emerging media landscape, we're not only using digital media to get the messages out on this, but also working with both health influencers and social media influencers to drive these messages forward. We know that consumers are really looking to get their information from a variety of sources, and by leveraging these beauty influencers, celebrities, and dermatologists, it really helps to build awareness, credibility, and trust for our messages. And you can see some of them mentioned here that we're utilizing. We're also picking specific influencers for different geographic regions, as we know that that's another way to be able to connect as well. And here's the second set of influencers focusing on lifestyle, fitness, and then also mommy bloggers as well. One of the other things that's been really key to our success, obviously building all of our health benefits and continuing to build new things that are relevant in the market, is also utilizing the work that's being done by the Nutrition Research Committee to continue to build the future benefits of almonds within India. And we've been so fortunate to be able to have studies that have been conducted specifically in India. As you can see here, the leading work that's been done on diabetes in the last year. India has the second highest number of people with diabetes, and it's been estimated that 7.3% of Indians are diabetic, while 10.3% are pre-diabetic. So overall, that's 1 in 2 adults living with diabetes that are currently undiagnosed in India. That's what the statistics say, and it's terrifying. So a new study that was conducted in India with India subjects by India researcher, and this has shown that the almond group had better measures of others in terms of their overall health indicators. A press conference was held and disseminated the research, and this really took off with the media, and the team was able to garner over 100 million impressions from that coverage. And also then it really opened doors with being able to present this research with other nutritionists and dietitians, and also throughout the entire India Dietetic Association and chapters. So with that, we've also really worked this year to expand health professional program. We know that this is an important part of looking towards the future as more and more consumers are focused on their health and how to get healthier. As Emily talked about, gyms and fitness, individuals and places are playing a key role, but we know so many people are going to the doctor and looking towards other spaces to get healthy. And so ABC has really stepped up programs with individual health professionals and organizations of health professionals in order to push almond messages even further. We've already begun having 2 programs with the annual conference of cardiologists and also the India Dietetic Association. So we're really excited to see this work continue as it solidifies our health network for the future. And finally, trade is also a very important part of the market and an important partner. As Julie had talked about, the trade conference will be in May this year, is currently slated. And this program really allows for ABC to continue to communicate the programs that are happening within the market with the trade. And this happens in 3 key ways: through that trade conference that we've discussed, through the trade newsletters, and then also new CPG seminars in the opportunity to continue to push those new products forward. There is absolutely no doubt in our mind that India is poised for growth. There is very strong alignment on so many health benefits and the ability for almonds to be relevant to consumers. That's only growing, and the opportunity to continue to grow that geographically. There is traditional use, but also the opportunity to continue to push snacking forward as really a modern view of snacking continues to emerge. And finally, the marketing programs have proven that they're working, and there's an opportunity to continue to expand those as we are across more audiences and to more people. So with that, a final note from Sudarshan.
Thank you for attending this session. We look forward to your partnership as we continue on this journey to increase consumption in India and in our own way help India become more healthy. Hope to see you in person next year.
So with that, we'd like to turn it back to Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Emily and Julie and Laurel. Great presentations. As you can find here, the Indian market is just, it's exciting and it's tailor-made for our industry. We have large crops, coming, and you couldn't pick a market that had more potential. And I'd have to say, a member of the GMDC committee and watching the Almond Board and their activities in India, it's one of the great successes, and I think there's just so much potential to go forward. So we should be really proud of the activities the ABC has been doing. So thank you very much. Now's an opportunity for any questions, Q&A, and just come up to the microphone or yell at us and we can hear you, and we'll direct the questions to the appropriate person.
Morning, great job, really good presentation. My question for the panel, what is the black swan you see, whether it's on the commercial side, the marketing, the regulatory, which can this market? Is there anything out there which we need to be looking at? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dinesh. Julie, do you want to try to start with that, and maybe we can all chip in? How's that sound? You have to have seen the movie.
But that's going to take it out, right?
Yeah.
There's so much going on in India, and I think the both opportunity and challenge is to try and get sufficiently engaged in getting more dialogue going back and forth. I think what we risk in India is, and I'm looking at it from that side in terms of the regulatory side, is India is very focused on their own growth, opportunities, which we can definitely be a part of. But they're also looking at what's happening in the rest of the world. So when you see things like some of these food facilities registration issues coming up, or India looking at trade opportunities, negotiating with the U.S. Trade Representative, I think the aspect here is for us to really watch how that's going on and staying engaged with partners in India, with everyone here in the States, because I think that could turn around very quickly on us if we're not part of that whole discussion. What we've seen in India is things can change in a moment. Suddenly there's a change in implementation, there's a change in interpretation. So I think staying engaged, showing benefits, our programs demonstrating how important almonds are internally to economic development, to overall health, how well they fit in the culture in India is really going to be our strength to try and mitigate some of these other issues that could be coming up.
And I'll just add from a consumer standpoint, I think we're far from this, but I think you always have to keep monitoring the market, look at what could happen. You know, if almonds became attached to an old form of society or life, and you know, it just in the US, for example, like with millennials, we kind of saw like, oh, almonds kind of became the old form of health. That's where we're really to reach millennials with a new approach and a new message. You know, that if that started to happen in India, that could be really dangerous, which is why we want to continue to promote the morning occasion, because we know that behavior, the connection to that behavior exists, and we know there's a lot of volume to be had there, but we're also encouraging other behaviors and reasons to eat almonds, like snacking and beauty and things like that. So we also track consumer perceptions very closely. So we have a study we do across the globe every year called Global Perceptions, and that gives us kind of a baseline so we can see where changes in perceptions related to almonds are occurring and see if we need to dig deeper into something to understand it. But all looks good right now. I don't want anybody leaving this room thinking that they're an old form of health in India.
Right. I would just add on the commercial side, I think, you know, in most of our markets, and India's no exception, is, you know, I think the market likes stability and predictability, and, you know, in moving forward in markets and having the buyers have the confidence that they're making the right decisions, and, you know, there's potential to move their product, you know, through the market. There's no doubt there's a lot of demand there, and it's an emotional with a lot of potential. But I think, you know, with our supplies, hopefully they're steady. There's no reason why it can't continue to grow. But obviously stability or, you know, avoiding a lot of large fluctuations in the markets, you know, as far as on the commercial side. India also has, you know, we do have one competitor, you know, as far as sourcing almonds, obviously, and that's Australia. But it's really, you know, it's not a large producer of almonds, but it is the second largest producer. They don't have enough almonds to take care of India and China. But, you know, I think as long as, you know, we're not on the wrong end of some free trade agreements, you know, I think that could be a black swan too. But right now it looks like we're all in the same boat together. So hopefully that answers your questions. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Really interesting to hear earlier about how important health and sustainability are in Europe. I'm just curious about sustainability. Is that something that is important, seems to be important right now to Indians and their food choices, and how does that kind of work?
Yep.
So what we see in the market right now is that sustainability is not as top mind the way that it's defined in the European marketplace. What we do see right now is a continued focus on the safety of foods and the safety of everything in the supply chain. And so there have been different, not for almonds, but different issues that arose during, with other food products. Oats are called out. And so protecting the safety of almonds is of primary concern right now, especially because we want to protect that health number. And so if there were other issues that arose, I think that also, that's where sustainability sits right now, is in terms of food safety.
Great, thank you. We have a question over here.
Kind of along those same lines, I know predominantly in shells in India, but that's usually hand cracked over there from what safety be in front of mind? Is there a potential in the future to see more shelled almonds, kind of changing the product mix to accommodate or address that?
I'll start with that. I think what you see here is, all the almonds that are shipped to India are hand cracked. And I think if you talk to the trade there, they'd believe that it's in shell and it's by hand and by machine in India. But I think there is a belief there that, them cracking it there actually produces some better quality. So at the end of the day, the kernel is being used as opposed to China where it's roasted and salted and sold as a snack in shell. All the kernels are used in the snacking. And whether it's hand cracked or machine cracked, there's a lot of eyes on the almonds if they are machine cracked. So there's a lot of effort to try to make sure that the almonds look good. I mean, there's a few markets, and India is definitely one of them where they buy with their eyes. So it makes a big difference. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. At the early on of the presentation, I saw there's a graph that shows that a high spike of the sales or supply of the almonds to India. Do you have any rationales about that last year's spike of the increase? And then second I have is there any threats of any other tree nuts that goes into the market in India that could potentially, impact our almond growth in India? Thanks.
Yeah. I'll touch on the shipments. Obviously last year, the almonds were extremely affordable. And, and the market recognizes that, and there's a lot of demand. So it really spurred on a lot of new consumption, I would say. So it might have turbocharged some more shipments that we can see in the future, which is really great news. And the nice thing is it continued through the year, going forward. And as far as competing tree nuts, I don't think anything really comes close. I think cashews, or, you hear about cashews, or there's pistachios, and California ships walnuts as well. But I don't think anything comes really close to almonds. It really has that special spot in Indian culture and the potential to go forward. I'm sure if anybody else wants to add.
Yeah, what we do see is that it does vary a little bit geographically. So we know in the south and also in the eastern part of the country that cashews, been very, very strong in that part of the country. We do see that especially California walnuts has been very aggressive in coming into the market and trying to push into some of the same health benefit spaces that almonds have typically owned. So even though I completely agree with Warren that almonds are extremely unique in this market, we don't need to be overly concerned with these competitive threats, but it is something that we're watching in terms of, how can we make sure that almonds really uniquely own different spaces and that we keep our health benefits very much intact. So it's not something where it's overly competitive, but definitely something that's happening.
Okay. Please.
So we know some of the uses are increasing. I'll talk a little to that, but big picture, we really have a strategic focus in almost every market to focus on the whole kernel in marketing, because at the end of the day, that's going to drive the most volume. And then there are ways, like potentially in some PR activities and things like that, where another form may be highlighted. But the main focus you'll see is almost going to be on kernels. I think you said you wanted to do, was there anything else you wanted to add, Julie?
One thing I would also add, the slide where Laurel was also talking about some of these partnerships, there are more companies that are starting to look at how to work with almonds as ingredients. And so working through like CII, the Consortium of Indian Industries, and some of their technical education sessions, we're talking about some of those benefits and attributes of almonds. So that's a way too to start expanding more awareness and I think interest in exploring applications.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie. Any other questions? Going once? I know we're in between this and lunch, so I understand that. So going twice? Oh, there's one. Okay.
As we have time, you guys agree.
No problem. Sold to the man in the red vest.
Thank you. Great presentation, and I agree very strongly. I think in India, snacking is the way to go. More than a question, comments, and in all the advertisements, I saw that vitamin E and antioxidants. I think in India, people know almonds is the healthiest stuff. I mean, I think just a suggestion maybe to go a little on this and say, compared to, like, I think you guys talked about, compared to the other nuts or other products, and say almond is better. And also, like you just said, Indians have a strong desire for their own healthy stuff too. How we can combine almonds to one or two of their own healthy stuff and mix and market it. You know, just more than a question, a suggestion.
Yeah, and that's a great comment. I mean, obviously you wanted to be part of the culture, the local culture, and not us bringing in everything from here to there. But I think India is such a rich country, and with so much experience, you know, we see that, you know, and obviously going there, you know, you see all the different applications for almonds, and you know, it's quite amazing. I think they had almond milk long before we did. You know, it's been there a while. So.
I think one of the really fascinating things from a consumer perspective that's happening is, as Emily talked about and shared, this push towards tradition, but also this polarity of a modern life, is that you're seeing different products come in and play in different ways. So you see people lean towards turmeric, but you also see them lean towards oats and oatmeal. All of a sudden, just over the last 3 years, all these consumers were, well, I eat oatmeal for heart health, just as you would hear Quaker talk to all of us in the morning here as well. So it's a really exciting time for almonds to be seen in both, as Emily said, that traditional way with the morning occasion, but really put to these modern spaces and think of them in a modern way as well. So that's why we just see such tremendous growth opportunity within the market.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could take that 7 almonds in the morning and transfer that here in some countries around the world as well. Borrow from them.
I have suggested multiple. It's kind of, Sudarshan makes fun of me. I'm like, I have the greatest idea. We're just going to move about 200 million Indians to China and
there you
to
go.
some other markets, and then everybody will start doing the morning occasion, and then people
There
can
you
go
go.
back home. It's
Yeah,
fine.
that's great.
I don't think my budget.
Just kidding.
So, all right, any other questions? Please.
Yesterday I sat in on the supply chain transportation discussion, hearing about those challenges, shipping overseas. Sounds like, you know, there's a light far down the tunnel. You know, looking down the road, do you potentially see that, you know, dramatically impacting our access to the Indian market and potentially stifling that a little bit, or is that a big priority of, you know, our supply chain efforts to make sure we have that channel to India?
Well, I think right now, you know, what we're talking about, the freight and the freight issues, you know, instead of taking 45 days to get a container to India, it's taking 2 or 3 months. So obviously, it's causing a lot of heartache. You're missing key consumption periods, although India is a great market where they're consuming all through the year. But, you know, it's a burden on all the handlers in this industry. And it's also somewhat out of our hands. And for our customers who are on the other end, you know, that are making purchases and planning on a product arriving at a certain time for a certain reason or certain commitment. India is not unique, but I think this market is being hit just as badly as everywhere else. You know, from everything we hear, it looks like you know, we're in this for a little bit for a while, which is really unfortunate. It's a lot of pressure on our industry, especially with the crops that we have. So, all right. Well, I guess thank you very much for your time, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.